This is the Content Marketing Podcast, episode number 239, What Learning Guitar Has Taught Me About Content Marketing. Hello and welcome to the Content Marketing Podcast. This is the show where we help you grow your tribe and your bottom line through insanely good content. I'm your host, Rachel Parker of Resonance Content Marketing, and today is August 10th, 2017. Hello, or as we say in Texas, howdy, and thank you for joining us for today's episode of the Content Marketing Podcast. Just a reminder, this podcast is available on iTunes, SoundCloud, and Google Play Music, so if you like what you hear, please feel free to click on over and subscribe. I also invite you to download our complimentary ebook, Ninja Secrets of B2B Blogging. Download today and learn how to create a B2B blog that will enchant your customers and leave your competitors green with envy. To snag your free copy, go to contentmarketinggift.com. Okay, folks, Content Marketing World 2017 is just a few short weeks away, and as I've mentioned, yours truly will be there serving as a moderator. And I just found out I'm going to be moderating the data and analytics track, which is so exciting because that's where I really want to learn more. That's the one place where I really want to up my expertise. So super excited to be there and to be moderating that track. This year's event, as always, it is in Cleveland, Ohio, and this year's dates are September 5th through 8th. So if you're in the States, those are the 4 days after Labor Day. Now, if you haven't registered, I do have a promo code that will save you $100 off your registration fee. When you register at contentmarketingworld.com, just enter the code RESONANCE100, and that's all caps, Resonance, RESONANCE 100 altogether. In the interest of full disclosure, this is an affiliate code, and I do receive a small commission on every registration that comes in with that code. Got to keep the lawyers happy with that one. Again, the code is Resonance100, all caps, no spaces, and the website is contentmarketingworld.com. And if you are planning on being there, please toss me a tweet at Rach Parker. Would love to connect with you. Maybe we can grab coffee during one of the breaks. Would love to have some FaceTime with you folks. Last week, we looked at what makes content bingeable and how to adapt these best practices to our own gems of content brilliance. If you happen to miss that episode, feel free to check it out on iTunes or via the RSS feed. Today, I'm sharing with you my latest hobby, and that is learning to play the guitar and what it has taught me about content marketing. But first, it's time to check in with our news feed for this week's rundown of news you can use. We've got two news items out of Facebook today, both of them concerning Facebook Stories. Facebook recently announced that Stories can now be made accessible to public followers so that anyone can see the stories that you post. Previously, only your friends or a subset of your friends could see those stories, but now you can make them public. And to do that, first tap the Add to Story button on the home screen, and then go ahead and post your photo or your video, whatever it is you want to share, and then you view your own story and you tap the three dots, the More button in the top right, and you will see a setting that says you can edit story settings and you can change from friends to public. Now, Stories is still only available to personal Facebook accounts, and no word yet on if or when it will be made available to pages. So we will keep you posted on that. Speaking of Stories, Facebook is also testing Stories on the desktop application. So if you're a frequent user of Facebook Desktop, and I know I am, you may have noticed that Stories are nowhere to be found if you're on your computer. Using your browser. So the network has confirmed to TechCrunch that it is now doing a test rollout of Stories for desktop and that a wider rollout is expected soon. And that will be a first because if you notice Instagram Stories, if you use Instagram on the desktop, Instagram stories are not there. And of course, Snapchat is strictly a mobile platform. So it'll be interesting to see when Facebook does roll out the stories to the desktop, what that does with their engagement level, if people will start to catch on. So very, very busy week over at Facebook. Okay, our content hit of the week is called 12 Social Media Tools Necessary for Content Marketing Success. This is by Neil Patel over on his own blog. And y'all know I'm a sucker for a good tools list, right? Especially this time of year. It's back to school. We're buying notebooks and pens and paper and just love all that stuff. So, and anytime I come across a list of tools, apps that I can use, I always jump on it. So Neil has pulled together a list of some super handy apps for amping up your social media game in different levels. Some of them have to do with analytics. Some of them have to do with management. And actually some of the apps that he mentions were new to me, and I was really happy to hear about these. So it is a very good read, as we have come to expect from Mr. Patel, and I will provide the link in the blog post for this episode at resonancecontent.com/podcast. That is it for this week's episode. If you stumble across something you think might be of interest to your fellow content marketers, please tweet it to me at @RachParker so that we can share. Now it's time for this week's Spotlight segment, what learning guitar has taught me about content marketing. Today we have a special guest in the Content Marketing Podcast studio, and that is my guitar. Yes, about 10 months ago, I did something I've been wanting to do for years, and that is learn how to play the guitar. So I'm going to pause this recording for just a second while I put this guitar away, and I'll tell you why in a second. Okay, I'm back. As many of you know, I actually record this podcast in a closet in my home, not a walk-in closet, but an actual flat closet. And having the guitar in my lap was incredibly awkward, and I don't want to hurt it. So I have set that aside. But anyway, about 10 months ago, I decided to start learning to play the guitar, and it's been great. It's been a wonderful experience. As I may have shared with you before, I've always been musical. I studied piano for 10 years, starting at the age of 8, and then I studied classical voice in my 20s. And for years, I've wanted to learn to play the guitar. So I started last October, and the whole thing began when my husband decided to take up the banjo, which is a whole nother story. And to learn guitar, I've been doing it all online. I've got a couple of books with book CD combos, but mostly it's been online. So today I wanted to share the content marketing lessons that have come to light as I've embarked on this journey. And really there have been two sources that have from which I've gotten these insights. The first is the learning process itself, just learning to play a new instrument and what I've learned about that. And then the second is I've discovered a lot of guitar teachers online who are very savvy about content marketing, and I've gleaned some insights from them as well. So with that, I give you the first 5 insights that this experience has, or I give you 5 insights that this experience has taught me about content marketing. The first insight that I want to share with you is master the basics. So in learning any instrument or anything for that matter, you've got to start with the basics. You've got to start with those fundamental things that for a lot of people are kind of rote and boring, but that's going to be your foundation that you're going to build on. And I'm actually going to bring in a sports analogy here. John Wooden, the basketball coach who won 10 NCAA championships at UCLA, was famous for a lot of things. But one thing he was famous for is that when freshmen would show up to their first practice, he would teach them how to tie their shoelaces. And everybody thought this was the most bizarre thing. They're like, okay, we're 18, 19 years old. We certainly know how to tie our shoes. But what Wooden knew is that improperly tied shoes can affect your performance as an athlete and can even lead to things like ankle injuries. So every single year he would start with the freshmen by teaching them how to tie their shoelaces. And I encountered the same things when I went to learn to play the guitar. You've got to learn how to hold the instrument. You've got to learn how to position your hands. You've got to learn the different parts of the guitar and how they work and how they function together to make music. And it's how every guitarist gets started, from Eric Clapton all the way down to, well, all the way down to me, really. And so as content marketers, yeah, we want to jump in and start creating just these brilliant gems from the outset, but we have to be masters of the basics, the fundamentals. So if you're going to be writing, you have got to know the rules of grammar, spelling, punctuation, and capitalization. And you might say, well, hey, Rach, I've read your blog post and your grammar is not always perfect. Yes, you are absolutely correct. We have got to know the rules so that we can break them strategically and intelligently. And I can always tell when I'm reading something written by a writer who has fun with the language, who actually knows the proper language but is having fun with it. And then there's the experience of reading something written by a writer who does not know the rules and who is just kind of winging it. And the difference is just night and day in terms of the perception that it creates in terms of that brand. So we've got to know the rules of writing. If we're going to be doing video or audio, we need to understand the fundamentals of how to present ideas in those formats. With video, you've got to be quick. You've got to present those ideas quickly. If you're doing audio, you got to understand that you're not going to have that visual component. So how do you present those ideas differently? We've got to master those fundamentals, and whether that is taking a class or attending a lot of webinars or just sitting down with some experts and learning those fundamentals, we got to get those in place. Just like John Wooden's basketball players learned how to tie their shoes, and just how the beginning guitarist needs to start learning how to hold the instrument and how to position your hands. So master the fundamentals. Insight number 2, the dip will happen, and we need to be ready for it, and we need to push through it. So in content marketing, as in learning an instrument or trying anything new, you start off just full of energy and enthusiasm and everything's magical and wonderful. And then we hit what Seth Godin calls the dip. And Seth Godin actually wrote an entire book called The Dip. So there gets to a point where, everything's great and everything's magical and fun. And then all of a sudden, it's not all fun anymore. And it starts to feel like work. So when I started learning the guitar, I started learning some individual notes. And after, a week or so, I learned how to put them together in a song. And I was like, wow, I'm playing a song. This is amazing. And then you master that song, and then you move on to a little bit more complex song. And you start working on that. And same thing with chords. When I started learning chords, it took me weeks to master like the C chord. And all of a sudden I was like, I'm playing chords. And then you start learning the harder chords. And there gets a point where you almost feel like you're going backwards. At least with me, there was a point where I felt it's like, okay, I feel like I'm getting worse. And I really wasn't getting worse. It was just a different phase of the learning process. And it happens with everything. As Seth Godin says, it happens whether you are, learning tennis or mastering a new skill, that gets to a point where you hit that dip. And that's where a lot of people quit. As Seth points out, that's where a lot of people just kind of say, okay, this is more... this is requiring more investment than I'm willing to make, or they get discouraged, or for whatever reason they quit. So with content marketing, we start off just gung ho. We've got our shiny new strategy. We've got our team together, and everything's fun, exciting, and new. And then after a while, the dip sets in and it starts to feel more like work. And of course, with content marketing, it's especially challenging because if you're starting tabula rasa, it takes a while to build up that audience and to start seeing results. So our dip is especially, it's a deep dip, right? Because we're not yet seeing those results that we set out to achieve. So we've got to know that that's going to be coming. We've got to know that that dip is going to come, and we've got to be ready to push through it. And getting back to my guitar learning, sure enough, I pushed through that dip and was able to continue making progress and reach a whole new level. So the dip will happen. We need to be ready for it, and we need to just deal with it and push through and keep doing what we do, and just know that we will come out on the other side. Insight number 3, be inspired, but never imitate. Whenever you see great musicians being interviewed, one question you're going to hear is, who are your influences? no matter how innovative, no matter how outside the box the person is, there is always an influence. There's always someone who inspired them, who influenced their choice of genre or their style that they play. But here's the difference. Great musicians are influenced, but they stop short of imitation. They don't try to be a copy of the person who influenced them. They take what they have learned from that influence and they blend it with their own unique style. So when I work with new clients about developing a style, I always ask them, who are your influences? Who inspired you to undertake this practice we call content marketing? Whose approach to marketing or to content marketing do they most admire? And we have a good conversation around that. And that's all wonderful and necessary because influences, they help us build up a system of preferences. And those preferences will gradually become braided together as we develop our own style. But we've got to stop short of imitation. Sometimes people say, oh, I love what Apple is doing. I love what American Express is doing. And I want to be that. I want to do what they do, but for my industry. No, you've got to be the you of your industry. So by all means, learn from the successes of those folks who have gone before, but you've got to be you. You've got to develop your own style. Otherwise, why do we need another Apple or another American Express? They're already doing what they do. But there's something unique and special about you, about your brand. Otherwise, why are you in business? You're probably not the only brand doing what you do. What makes you special, and how can you leverage that as you develop a style for your content? And going back to guitar, Eric Clapton spent a lot of time studying with blues guitarists down in Mississippi. And he, if he had decided to make a career for himself as a straight up blues guitarist, he could have done that, no question. He's got the skills, he's got the musicality, no two ways about it. But when he took the blues music that influenced him and blended it with his own rock and roll style, that's when the magic started to happen. So as you go on in your content marketing journey, yes, by all means, let the success of others guide you. Be able to look at what other people are doing and say, wow, that's fantastic. How can I leverage that for my brand? But remember, it's also important to develop your own style and to rock your own approach to your subject matter. And sometimes people say, there are a lot of people, there are a lot of competitors in my industry. What can I possibly say in my content that's not already being said? And my answer to that is probably nothing. In terms of information, there's probably nothing new under the sun, but what you do have to add is your own approach and your own style and the way you answer those questions that people have. So we've got to rock our own approaches. We got to develop a style and just rock it like there's no tomorrow. Or as I once heard a speaker say, drive it like you stole it. So that brings me to insight number 4. Don't try to be all things to all people. As I looked at these, as I started reviewing these guitar teachers online who are on YouTube and other areas, I discovered that every guitar teacher has a very distinct approach. Some will have you practicing chords in your very first lesson, while others will start by teaching you notes and scales and how they're arranged on the fretboard. Now, having come from piano, I gravitate more towards the latter, the more technical approach. I don't want to have someone show me where to put my fingers to play a C chord and call it a C chord. I want to know what those notes are and where they come from. I want to be able to say, okay, so the 3rd fret on the A string is, let me see, B flat, B, C. Okay, so that's C. That's the root of the chord. That's how I learn. Very technical, very linear. And eventually I found a teacher, a guy named Eric Andreas, who has a wonderful program. And he also has a very technical approach. He comes from a classical background, but now he teaches and plays rock and blues and just about everything. But his teaching style resonates with my learning style. So as content marketers, we've got to accept that we're not going to be all things to all people. And I still talk to so many clients who are saying, oh, we want to create that one viral video. We want to get 1 million hits on it. And I'm like, that's great, but what's that going to do for your brand? How is that going to bring in the people that you want to talk to? And we've got to accept that everybody in our target audience has preferences. They have preferences around the topics that interest them, around the approach, around the voices that are out there, around the format. And we've got to accept we're just not going to please every last one of them. If you try to be all things to all people, one of two things is going to happen. Either you're going to wind up with like a least common denominator and end up with a very bland kind of vanilla approach to everything you do that's not going to inspire anybody, or you're going to jump around and come across as kind of schizophrenic, and no one is going to get a grasp of who you really are. You've got one approach one day and one approach the next day, and you're kind of jumping around, and no one can get a grasp of what is your content brand. So as content marketers, we've got to find our groove. We've got to just find that voice, that approach, that style, and accept that it's not going to appeal to anybody, but it's going to appeal to the right people. The people with whom that style is going to resonate are probably people who are going to be really, really good prospects. Excuse me, and potentially new customers. Insight number 5. This is something that I learned from the guitar teachers who are really good at content marketing. Excuse me. Ooh, gotta drink my water today. Give away the good stuff, but save the best stuff for your paying customers. Now, these are teachers, so their content is their product. They're not using content to promote widgets or travel services or something else. They're in the content business, whether the content is an online training course or one-on-one lessons. And the ones who do a really great job at content marketing know exactly where to draw the line, because they've got 3 levels of content. They've got the low-hanging fruit, which is the stuff they put out on YouTube that's free, anybody can access. Nothing, no gating necessary. Then you've got the content that's gated. That might be your ebooks about, how to learn your first 10 chords or whatever it is. And for that, people have to submit an email address and agree to be put on the mailing list. And then there's the content that they charge for. So they might have an elaborate online learning platform that is, maybe it might be $29.99 a month, or it might be a monthly fee or a yearly fee, and that's how they monetize. And they're very clever about what to give away for free, what to gate, and what they charge for. So as content marketers, regardless of your industry, we need to look at our content on those 3 levels. So what is the low-hanging fruit? What goes out there on the blog for everybody to see? What goes out there on YouTube? What goes out there in Facebook Live videos or in podcasts? And then what is gated? What dives a little bit deeper? That person who is taking in that free out there content, if they want to go a little deeper, what do they want to know more about? How can I help them dig a little deeper and guide them further in their learning process? And then finally, what is reserved for my paying customers? So you may never actually charge for content, or if you decide to write a book or create a paid training course, that's wonderful. And a lot of companies have found a lot of success that way. But what do you reserve for paying customers? What is that VIP content that you want to keep close to your chest and reserve for people who are your paying customers? So, and if you go out there and look at what guitar teachers are doing, it's very insightful in terms of how they arrange their content in those 3 levels. And there's a lot that we content marketers can learn from those guys. So that is insight number 5. Give away the good stuff, but save the best stuff for customers. And you know what? I just decided I'm going to share a bonus insight with you. This was not in my show notes. This was not on my list. But insight number 6 is always, always keep learning. The great musicians, no matter what level they get to in terms of fame, in terms of recording contracts, in terms of just being the one that people think of, they are always learning. They are always trying to broaden their horizons. They're always looking to the masters who have gone before them and looking to improve themselves. So as content marketers, it's really easy to get to a certain level and say, okay, we found our groove. We're good. We're going to stay here. But we always need to be looking for ways to up our game, whether it's exploring new venues or just getting better at what we do, at the content that we're rocking right now. So that is your bonus insight. Always, always, always be learning. Take a clue from the masters. Like Clapton spent a lot of time down in Mississippi hanging out with those blues guys. We too need to look for new inspiration, new influences, and new insights to always get better at what we do. So those are my insights, 5 plus a bonus, on what learning guitar has taught me about content marketing. If you have any questions or if you want to add to the conversation, feel free to tweet me at @RachParker. Now it's time for our content marketing tip of the week. In this week's Spotlight segment, when I talked about guitarists, we talked a lot about style. And if you've done a good job with your content marketing strategy, you have a good grasp on what your content style is, or sometimes I call it your content brand. What is your content brand? And it's an aspect that far too many people overlook. They think if they put good information out there, then their job is done. Doesn't matter how dry it is or how straightforward it is. Doesn't matter if it reads like it was written by a 6th grader, as one potential client, I say potential client in quotes, but they thought they were doing just fine. But we've got to remember, content isn't just about the information. It's about the experience. Think about why people still subscribed to the New York Times and the Wall Street Journal. These publications have the same news that you can get anywhere else. Yeah, they do have some exclusive interviews and some insights and like that. But basically, if you're just looking to get news, you can get that from any number of sources. But what people are willing to pay for is the style. It's the quality of writing. It's the approach. So if the results from your content marketing efforts aren't where you'd like them to be, take a good honest look at your content style and see if you need to go into your fortress of solitude and think about your style and how to take what is special about your brand and translate that into a solid style for your content. You might be surprised at the dividends that generates for your engagement and for your conversions. Okay, campers, that's it for me today. I hope you've enjoyed this episode of the Content Marketing Podcast. If you like what you've heard, please feel free to subscribe on iTunes or Google Play Music or via our RSS feed. And if you really like what you've heard, please leave us a quick review on iTunes. I would so appreciate it. Also, if you want to learn more about content marketing, you will definitely want to grab a copy of my book, The Content Marketing Coach, Everything You Need to Get in the Game and Win. That is available in book and Kindle format. To learn more about the book and to download a free chapter, visit contentmarketingcoachbook.com. As you know, I always like to leave you with a quote, and today's comes from a truly great guitarist who passed away just a couple of years ago, and that is B.B. King. B.B. King once said, quote, "The beautiful thing about learning is nobody can take it away from you," unquote. Again, this is Rachel Parker with Resonance Content Marketing. Thank you again for listening, and we will see you again next week. Take care.